Are we going?
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome. I'm happy to see all three of you. I'm going to introduce myself in a few minutes. The blue sheet is great because if you have questions as we go along, just jot them down. And at the end, we'll definitely have time for question and answer. So keep that handy. If you need a pen, we have them up here. And I'll just get started. That's the needs evaluation form. We have it online too. Some people we're online as well these days. And this is me and our other attorney. She's not here today, but we both work about 10 minutes from here is our office. So I've been an attorney for about 27 years. Started off my career doing business law. Was working in a big law firm, going to court, helping business owners mostly when they were fighting about something. I was married. I met my husband at a church picnic, not too far from here. Fell in love, bought a house. He had his own business. I had a great job at a law firm, and I thought my life was perfect. One day, in the middle of my perfect life, my husband called me at work and said he wasn't feeling good. So we went to the emergency room. They take all the tests that they take to try to figure it out, and they came back and they said that he had cancer and that it was already very, very bad. I know. He was 36, and I was 31. I just turned 31, and we had no idea. It was a complete shock. We had always had estate planning on our to-do list. I was a lawyer. I could have done my own planning, but we just thought, all we have is a house, we don't have kids yet, we didn't make it a priority. And so there it was on the to-do list. But at that point, we were in crisis mode, and we had to quickly get our planning in place. I was shaken. I was not in any mindset to try to do my own planning at that point. So we ended up going to a law firm, very traditional experience. We had a lawyer who was probably a little hard to understand. We weren't really clear on what we were being charged. I remember calling with a question. 2 weeks later, we get the bill in the mail for the phone call. But we just needed to, do it at that point. And so we signed our plan, and about 14 months after that, my husband passed away. And I knew that I was going to need help because he had a business partner and a business, and even though I had a trust with my name on it, I really had a mess in my hands. And I knew that that first lawyer was not a fit. So I went out, I found another lawyer, I found someone great who put his arm around me, took me by the hand, walked me through everything I had to do. When I got back up on my feet and I had to decide what I was going to do next, I did go back to practicing law at the business law firm, but pretty briefly, because quickly I realized that most of our friends, most of our business clients at the time, they were in the same boat that I was in, still on the to-do list. And I knew that I did not want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. And I knew there had to be a better way. So that's when I decided to start Morgan Law Group. That was in 2005. I remarried. I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. My 9-year-old goes to Seashore in Huntington. And really started the firm with the idea that it would be the firm I would have wanted to go to myself. So I'll tell you more about that, but it's really why I'm here today and why I do so much education for parents, young people, because I recognize, obviously, that this is so important. And it's a different mindset when we're young and we have young kids. So I'm gonna switch gears to that. Why we're here today is because we have young kids that we love and care about. And as a mom, I know that, when I had kids, this whole is amplified, why I do this and what I talk about. So we're going to talk about 2 time frames that are important when we have kids. There's the short term. What would happen immediately if something unexpected happened to us, and what would happen in the long term? And I recognize this is a super difficult topic. So it's probably why I often have small audiences, because this is a hard conversation. I'll make it as interesting and engaging as I can. But immediately, if something happened, you're on date night and you don't make it home. The kids are with a babysitter, someone you trust. What do you think the babysitter would do next? Does anyone have an idea? What would she do?
Call the emergency contact.
Huh?
Call an emergency contact.
Yes, call. Yes, if you're like me, I've left my little A-type list of all the people. She might call her mom if she's 16. She might call the police. Legally, what needs to happen is the police will eventually need to locate your children, either after having found you in an accident or after having been called by the babysitter. They're going to want to know who has legal authority to be with your kids. If they're not sure, they're going to take them into Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services will eventually figure it out, but most of us do not want there to be any risk of our kids being in Child Protective Services even for a minute. So we're going to talk very specifically about that. The second time frame is the long term. This is what you may have traditionally heard of. Who would raise your kids if something happened to you permanently? So I'll tell you a brief story about a friend of mine. She's taking care of this all now, but before that, she has 2 women in her life. If something would have happened to her, who would have stepped forward? And I want you to pretend that you're the judge. There's her sister and her sister-in-law. Her sister-in-law is in her 30s. She owns a home. She's married. She has 3 kids of her own, and she works part-time in a bank. She lives in the suburbs. Her sister, on the other hand, is in her 20s. She's single, no kids. She lives in an apartment in downtown, and she works full-time, of course. And like most 20-somethings, she's going out on the weekends, having a good time. Between these 2 women, if a judge had to pick, who do you think they would pick to be the guardian? Sister-in-law, right? She looks the best on paper. But that's actually the last person that my friend wanted to be the guardian of her kids. Not because she doesn't love her sister-in-law, but because she knows in her heart she would not raise her kids with her values, like she wants her kids raised. So a judge would never know that. And of course, the sisters could fight over it. And that's why we need long-term guardians. Because as hard as it is, honestly, to think about somebody else raising our kids, it's better than the alternative of someone we don't know making this decision without all the right information. So, and I'm gonna get a lot more specific about what I call the Kids Protection Plan in a few minutes. So the next thing we're going to do, just high level, is what would happen to your assets if something unexpected happened to you? And that would be if you have a plan or if you don't have a plan. The state of California has a plan for you, and it's called probate. How many people have either heard about probate or gone through one personally with a family member? Okay, you have. It's, in California, it's very difficult. Somebody would need to volunteer to be the executor. They file a petition. Everything freezes for about 3 to 4 months. From start to finish, a simple probate takes at least 12 to 18 months, if not longer. And it's also very expensive. In California, they take 5% of the gross value of your assets. So what that looks like is if all you had was a house or a condo you could sell for $500,000. Doesn't matter what the mortgage is. 5% is $25,000. Just if that's all you had was a house that you could sell for $500,000. So it's very expensive in California. This is the will of Anna Nicole Smith. Why do I show you this? Because I can. It's public. Probate is a public process, which means that anyone, once it's started, can see your kids' names, their birthdays, how much money they'll be receiving, when. There's obviously creepy people out there who go through these records, make phone calls, and I've seen it happen. So it's public. And when we don't have a plan in place, then unexpected things can happen, especially when we have young children under age 18. What happens with them is the money gets under the court supervision until they turn 18. It's called a guardianship process. The court picks somebody to manage that for them. It's very restrictive on what can be used for them while they're growing up, and there's a lot of court fees. And then when they turn 18, they just get a big lump sum distribution, no guidance, boom, all at once. So that's what happens if we don't have a plan in place. I did a little sample. You can kind of think through what your numbers would be in here, but I just plugged in a family home. I put in 800,000. I know that's not around here anywhere. A rental property I plugged in, business interest, I put in 100,000, stocks, bonds, and bank accounts. And then what is really important here is life insurance or retirement accounts payable to a minor. So if we're married, we usually put our spouse as the primary on our life insurance, or if we have a 401k or an IRA. And then we would want it to go to our kids if something happened to our spouse, or if we're single, maybe we just put our kids or another family member. And the problem with this is that since our kids are under 18, that money will get pulled into probate because it can't get paid directly to them. So in this case, I put life insurance or retirement accounts payable to a minor, and it quickly added up to just over $2 million. And the 5% for the cost to go through probate works out to $117,000. So it's very expensive to go through probate, and that's a little sample. So that's all the bad news. The good news is we can avoid all this. The way to avoid it is by putting in place a thoughtful plan and making sure every asset is titled correctly. So I put up there a fully funded living trust. I usually get questions about that. What does that mean? But what I see a lot of times, and we get calls in our office, is that a person had a trust, but they don't have their assets titled in the name of the trust. And so if you have any a home or any investment accounts or any real property, the deeds have to be changed, business interest, same thing with life insurance and retirement accounts. We want to make sure the beneficiary is pointed correctly to the trust for our, our spouse, our kids, and then any personal property, that everything is really coordinated thoughtfully, and that's how we avoid probate. So that's the good news. And then I think it's 50, I'll probably get the number wrong. In California, we have like over $1 billion in unclaimed property. And part of the reason for that, it's hard for me to imagine, is people, forget, especially older people, they pass away and now their assets haven't been titled correctly, and then it's lost to the state. So I put make your living trust a real treasure chest. And what I mean by that is, as younger people, the way I think is I really want to do something positive for my family and make a statement about where I'm going. And that's really what an estate plan is. People think estate plan, I'm not wealthy, I don't have an estate, and it doesn't seem to really resonate for a lot of people. But it really is something that's not just for wealthy people, but really for people who want to have a foundation, I think, to build on for their financial future. So I really think of it as much, much more than just, a stack of paper that says Living Trust on it, but something that we're really doing proactively as a gift. It truly is more than about you. It's a gift for the people that you love the most. So that's what I mean by that. Okay, so this is Terry Shivo when she was young and fabulous. She was 26 when she had basically a very sad incident that left her in a vegetative state, and her husband and her parents got in a huge fight, and it was all in the media. This was a while ago, about her care. And I bring this up only because every adult, especially when we have people we love, needs to have some basic estate planning documents, like a healthcare directive and a power of attorney, and that would have avoided all the problems that her family had. Okay, kids protection plan. This is where I just get into a lot more nitty-gritty about what I mean by protecting our kids. We call it a kids protection plan in our firm because it's really the foundation of the planning that we do is thinking about how to protect our kids. So step one, I have choose the right long-term guardians. Use a non-emotional 3-step process. Some people say, we would love to do this, but my spouse and I cannot agree, and we're stuck, and so we haven't done anything because we can't figure out who to pick. So if that's you, you may need some mediation to get through it. And it is emotional, so having an outsider help guide you to who that is. We talk pretty carefully about how and who to put on that guardian nomination. And then step 2, legally document your choice. Another thing I hear a lot is we've told everybody, everyone in our family knows, everyone's on board, but there isn't actually a legal document. Step 3 is to choose the right short-term guardians. These are local friends or family within 20 minutes of the house. This is what avoids that problem that I talked about right at the beginning. Sometimes people's guardians are in another state or even in another country these days. We have a gap. We want to close the gap so that somebody close by would immediately, those are our first responders, we call them, be able to be with the kids, have legal authority, until our long-term guardians are able to get here on the scene. So naming short-term guardians, and then step 4, of course, legally document that choice as well. And then giving the short-term guardians those legal instructions and the documents. I have, my 3 people have it, and I also leave it for my nanny so that, you know, it's always handy. You know, it's not gonna be tucked away in some drawer somewhere where no one can find it in an emergency. So that's the part that I think is important on that. And then 6, give all caregivers and schools instructions on who to call. And I know we all have, the schools always ask for who your emergency contacts are. This is going a little bit further than that, in that we want to actually have legal authority. My vision was, you know, you bring home the baby, your first baby, and you think, oh, let's finally go out for sushi and a glass of wine, you know, after all this 9 months, and, you know, leave them with my, you know, the baby with my mom, and you know, you're all hormonal and emotional, and I don't know about you, but, and you think, oh my gosh, what would happen? And it's really making sure that the babysitter wouldn't do the wrong thing, or the babysitter wouldn't panic. You know, the babysitter knows exactly what to do and who to call, who has legal authority. So that's step 6. So step 7, tell your long-term guardians what to do if called upon, and where to find your long-term guardianship documents. What I see a lot of times, we don't do it this way, is that attorneys will put the guardian nomination on the very last page of a person's will. And the reason we don't do it that way is because I really want to make sure that that document would be accessible and not like locked away in like a safety deposit box or something. And then 8, be sure to exclude anyone that you would never want to challenge your guardianship decision or to be considered as a guardian. So what this is, it doesn't apply to most people, luckily. It does apply to some people, is that when you nominate guardians, it's called a nomination, meaning that a judge would have to actually go, oh, I see you nominated Dana. Okay, yes, I approve that. Yes, she can be the guardian. If it, you know, if it came to that. Somebody else in your family, typically it would have to be a very close family member, like a parent or a sibling, could step forward and say, no, I want to be the guardian. I would be a better choice, judge. And then there's a evidentiary hearing. For some people, that they don't want that. You know, there could be somebody in the family that is not appropriate, and so we want to make sure we do what we call a confidential exclusion, so then that would be evidence of someone you wouldn't want to be the guardian. And then step 9, provide enough financial resources through life insurance or other savings. And this is really just a part of estate planning. We don't sell life insurance, but it is something that we want to coordinate with the plan and address, because sometimes people tell me, well, we could never choose these people to be our guardians because they don't have any money. How would they ever have a car big enough, or how would they have that extra room to have our kids in there? And it's really just thinking through, you know, do we need extra life insurance so that we can choose the right people and make sure they would have whatever they need and not have to go through probate or have extra stress or financial difficulty. Okay, so now, what's the next step? Usually by this point I've somewhat freak people out by all this information, but what's the next step and what's the cost? That's always on people's mind. Like, this sounds great, but it sounds like it could be expensive. So I like to just talk about it. Should you consider doing it yourself, or do you need to work with a lawyer? And if so, not all lawyers are the same. The issue with the do-it-yourself is if you actually do have assets, then it ends up costing more in the long run for people if they don't do it correctly. And I think the goal of estate planning really is peace of mind. And the people that I've seen, oftentimes it looks like this. They call us, they make an appointment, and they go, we did our estate plan, we panicked, we were going on an anniversary trip, we were leaving the next day, we jumped online, and we did it really quick, and now we have no idea if this is going to work, or we never signed it, or we never transferred our assets into it. But all the things that they tell me are basically leading to the same result. We don't actually have the peace of mind that this is going to accomplish our goals. And so what's the point of that? So for people who do have assets, I would say at a minimum, taking the next step to continue your education. This is a very, high level, general information today, but finding out what would happen in your specific situation. So would you benefit from working with a lawyer? If all you really have are, a couple bank accounts and some personal belongings, then perhaps your first step could be to do something yourself. But like I was saying, if you want to make sure that you avoid probate and protect your assets for your kids, then I think working with a lawyer, I am biased because I am a lawyer, but I'm biased because of the information that I have and all that I've seen and experienced. So, planning for death. The typical experience, the experience that I had that I shared, was very transactional. I never heard from the lawyer again unless I called him, and then I got the bill in the mail, and it was just very templated. I got my trust, it had my name in it, and that was really the end of it. And I really wasn't comfortable contacting him for further guidance because I knew that the billing was unclear to me. Like, it was very much the hourly billing, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. So we take a different approach. I call it planning for life, probably because just a different mindset of having these long-term relationships with our clients, staying in touch with them on a regular basis. We do 3-year review meetings for our clients for no charge. We stay in touch so they hear from us on a regular basis. And we do all of these things because what I've seen is people will often sign a plan, put it on a shelf, and never hear from the lawyer again. That plan may have been perfect on the day it was signed, but we need it to really be perfect, down the line, and so bridging the gap between the day it's signed and the day it's needed by staying in touch and having those regular review meetings is really the way to make sure it'll work. So what should it cost? There's a lot of different price points that I hear a lot out there in the community. I'll say that in our firm, it's typically going to range between about $3,000 and $6,000 on average. And if it's much less than that, then you may be getting, there's just apples and oranges about, what exactly are you getting for, what you're paying. So we try to be really clear about what it is, and we do a lot of things differently in our firm to support that, but that's just an idea of what it would cost, so it's not, a surprise. But the good news is we do everything by flat fee agreed upon in advance, so that there are no surprises is really the goal. And then making it easy for you. I always offer for you to come into our office and have an initial meeting with me or our other attorney if that's of interest to you. The general information here today hopefully is great, and I'm happy to answer more questions, but the next step in terms of education is specifics. What would happen specifically with your house, with your kids, with your life insurance? What do you like about that? What do you not like about that? What would you want to see different? And that's where we can have a conversation. We make recommendations. That's when we can make quote a flat fee based upon what we talk about together. And that's really the easiest way to make sure all your questions are answered and that you find out really what would actually happen and get that specific. So the biggest hurdle for most people, I was chatting earlier, is usually procrastination. I shared with you that was my obstacle many years ago. And the reason we offer this is really to help get over the hurdle of procrastination. If I can give you a little nudge to take the next step, is if you want to make your appointment, we usually say this week, we'll give you $250 off if we end up working together. That's my little push of you've taken the step to find out this much. If you want to take the next step in your education, it's no obligation. It's not, it's just if we end up working together, we would take that off because I want to try to help people take the next step. All right. So the next step, if you'd like to turn in this form, this is a way for us to stay in touch with you, or if you'd like further resources from us. I'm happy to give the PowerPoint. I think that Nina's going to also have it available for the parents, the PowerPoint and the video, and then schedule a meeting. We usually block off 2 hours on our calendar, and we do ask for some homework in advance. So that way you're prepared, we're prepared, it's a productive time together, and it may not last the full 2 hours at all, but at least that is where we take a very educational approach. And I'm happy to answer questions. We have an online scheduler, and we also have our traditional method of a phone call to the office.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to see state at all, any state care at all, ever. I want to go straight to the family or friends, but never, ever taken it by state. So we did, the only thing we did, but that was the thing, I didn't sign it. My husband's lawyer, we just put my friends and my family name on it, but I never signed it. They said they put a name, they add a name to it, but just a name, not even an address or anything. So is that normal like that, or?
So not sign, for you not to sign?
Yeah, and also not put address of those people on my friends?
So you would need to sign it for it to be
Yeah.
legally valid.
Okay.
We do put the address and the phone number
Okay.
on ours,
Okay.
but it wouldn't be.
It's not
It
necessary.
wouldn't be, if their address, if the guardian's address is
Yeah.
not on there, it could still be legally valid.
They just wanted a city. That's all they wanted, name and city.
I wouldn't worry about that as much as not having your signature on it.
Aha, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So, I mean, that person would need to be located and, legally identifiable. So, I mean, if their name was like John Smith, that might be a little tricky. But, you know what I mean, just in terms of they're gonna need
Yeah.
to produce their
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
identification.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to make it more specific because I really don't want my kids
I know.
to go to state at any point.
Yeah, the
Um,
kids protection plan that we do is, I would say, as thorough as I could make it. We do wallet
I
ID
love that.
cards.
Okay,
I have a wallet ID card. We do that for all of the parents
okay,
with the kids protection plan, so it goes right behind my driver's license. So if I was ever found in an accident, the legal authority, the people with the legal authority are on there. We send letters to the guardians,
got it.
so that way they know what
Okay.
their role would be, what
Okay.
they would need to do in an emergency. It's about as over the top as a A-type mom
Oh my
attorney could be. Just saying.
So if we do that with you, they never go to state, right? They go to the short term and then go to long term?
It's as much as I can do
Yeah.
legally that
Yeah.
I can think of.
Okay.
So there's several components to it that cover every base that I can think of. So, no one could guarantee it that they wouldn't, but I would say I can't think of anything else that we could do.
So if I, let's say, put short term my brother-in-law, just for short term, and then a long-term guardian picks them up,
Yeah.
the state have no rights to take him, right? Because
The short term?
yeah,
Yeah.
and the long-term after that.
No, because the long term will have to be approved by a court, no matter what.
Aha, but he's with them. They still with them.
Yeah, he can be with the short term because that they're legally nominated as a short term
Oh,
guardian.
got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is your long term guardian out of the area?
No, out of state, but in the Riverside County,
Oh, okay, not too far.
because they have the kids same age and we know each other from a
Yeah.
long time.
And you have backup.
And the short term is right here, Laguna Beach.
Yeah, perfect.
And then my sister, but she's in Czech. But I like to go for
She's
summers to go Czech Republic.
Oh, right, yeah, she would need definitely.
She will be on that too.
Yeah, as a backup.
Is that enough to do the short term and 2 long term, or do we need more?
I usually recommend 2 or 3 short term.
Got it. Okay.
And I usually like at least 2 long term personally, or 3. It can be as many as you want, but I would say that's the most common. Is
Okay.
2 or 3 short term
Okay.
and 2 or 3 long term.
I can figure it out. It's just my husband's parents, they're already 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
so that's kind of,
Yeah.
I can figure out somebody else. That wouldn't be a problem.
Good.
So I just call you, and I have to talk to my husband first, but
Yeah.
then you can call you.
Yeah,
Hi.
yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. I think our contact information's on the bottom of this sheet,
The
or
one for
if you
90.
want us, yeah, we're local. All right, anybody else have any questions? I don't wanna keep you guys.
Do I ask for you when I call for the appointment, or
Yeah, you could just, if you want an appointment with me, then you can just let them know.
do you have
I'm
a business
Darlynn.
card?
Yeah. There's only, we have 2 attorneys, me
Okay.
and 1 other.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So there's
Okay.
only like 2 options.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our office is like 10 minutes from here.
Okay.
We're just down by a little closer up by Arthur and Birch.
Thank you.
Well, you guys have been a great audience. Thank you.
I'm gonna do it as fast as possible because I need a peace of mind.
I know. I feel bad because I know that I see some of the